Well, we didn't hear from Colt Gray today. We just saw this young boy, 14 years old, walking in with that shock of blonde hair that you saw. He sat there motionless, listening to the judge.
In the last 24 hours, it's been astonishing how much information has been released on Colt Gray. We've seen his picture. We've seen the myriad of ways this individual's world was being destroyed, making him emotionally compromised.
Jim, I just lost my planet. I can tell you, I am emotionally compromised.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Some of you may know I've written books on this particular subject matter. Young boys struggle to cope with their emotions at 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Being emotionally compromised makes that emotional battle even worse and potentially a losing one. And so what have we seen here? We've seen Colt Gray's father and mother. We've seen how troubled his home life was. There's drug addiction that's part of it. We see he was taken out of one school, put into another. We see financial problems, problems of dysfunction at home and truancy at school. We see bad things gnawing at the psychological beast, escalating here, there, and everywhere. We see dodgy online activity. We see red flag after red flag after red flag. We see problems got so bad the police were called. And so they interviewed the father and the son. But what aren't we seeing? Do you know the answer?
It's very pretty, Bishop, but what are we looking for?
That's it. How long till it blows?
Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. By the way, I'll put a link to my book on this particular subject matter in the description. If you find this analysis worthwhile, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. So what is the number one clue that we all missed in this particular case, and also in all of these kind of incidents? I have to say these incidents for me are a lot like the JonBenet Ramsey case. People can't see the woods for the trees. They can't see the individuals and the evidence in its own right because they can't see beyond their own projections and transferences. Even the people who can see are stuck in cycles not of health care in the true crime sense, but disease care, treating the symptoms, not the underlying problem. So what is the underlying problem? The underlying problem is the number one clue we've all missed. Okay, but what is it specifically? Well, I did a targeted search a few hours ago, and one you can do right now as well. And do it using these words: Colt Gray bullied. Now, when I did a couple of hours ago, I couldn't find anything, literally nothing. A couple more hours have passed, and there are one or two references, but you've still got to look for them. And what's really interesting in this interview from the CBS reporters is when they play a little bit of audio about this boy being picked on, the person doing the interview still doesn't even pick on that herself.
All the school shootings, things that happen.
Yeah,
scary. Hey, are you getting picked on at school? He is. He's getting picked on at school, and is everything okay? That's why I keep going up there.
Yeah.
You know, because you never really know, and I don't want anything to happen to him. So.
I read the transcript in one of the interviews between the officer and the father, and it sounds like the teen was saying that.
Right now, when I've done this search, there are one or two references in the Post and in obscure publications overseas, like the Times of India. This is because it's not part of the conversation. It's not part of the media landscape, and no experts seem to be focused on it, none that I know of. And I mean to change that with your help. Certainly if you find this resonates with you and you can share it amongst your networks. One of the reasons I feel that bullying is glossed over by virtually everyone is because those who are doing it, once an incident like this happens, they don't admit it. In other words, they cover that up. They hide that away. They, in a sense, lie about it. And others around them do the same. And why do they do that? Because they're too afraid to admit what they've done, or perhaps too ashamed and humiliated because now the consequences of their actions are all too real. So they hide it, they lie about it. So now you actually have society lying about itself to itself. And because in terms of these schools and classrooms, the people doing it are popular, so does everybody else. So do their supporters, because they don't want to become fall out of favor. And that also includes their peers, their teachers, the entire school. And then the whole thing happens again. It's easier then and more tempting to blame the shooter, to blame guns, to blame mental health in a generic way, while pretending not to know what's undermining that mental health each and every day when you're elbow to elbow in the classroom. It's interesting when that young lady described her experience with the 14-year-old, she described him in some detail, but she left one part out, and that's the number one clue we all missed, and the number one clue we all miss during each and every one of these incidents. And I don't say number one for nothing. It's not the number 5 clue, it's the number one clue. It's something we can actually do something about. You know, the whole legislating of guns is a political minefield. It's something that's not changing very quickly. Security at schools is an option, but it's also not something that is all that easy to implement. You've got to kind of make it a kind of coda at schools. But there's another aspect that's a lot easier to do. You just need to get people to buy into it. And why don't people buy into it? Because people get defensive. They poo-poo the bullying because you weren't bullied or because everyone was bullied. It's not a big deal. But some are bullied more than others, and some have shit going on at home, serious shit, a mother that's into drugs, poverty, just a lot of dysfunction, serious shit going on at home that's more than usual, which just makes high school a far more miserable experience. And I think everyone can recognize someone who's having a miserable experience in high school. And how is that person treated? With kindness, with care, with sensitivity, or with ridiculing, adding insult to injury. The key measure is when the bullied individual begins to shut down, stop talking, and basically, in a real sense, throws in the towel in terms of their own journey to individuation. Then things have passed a psychological inflection point. And that's when I think things get quite dangerous. You may think it's not a big deal being socially stuck and quiet, and caged in and stagnant and humiliated, but it's a really big deal when the people around you are living their best life, becoming heroes, experiencing life and love and fun and friendship and actualizing and self-actualization and their power and eminence over the world, while someone else is turning into a loser. And they are. It's not just happening by accident. They are being deliberately made the victims of oppression. They're the victims of a tyranny that's going on. It's something that others participate in. They are being tormented and intimidated every single day in a free society, in a society that is supposedly civilized and has laws. You know, as adults, we have a right to our dignity and to not being intimidated or defamed or slandered. Why not as children as well? You know, if folks take the radical but easy step of just acknowledging that this is a serious issue, bullying in classrooms, then if you just do that, people feel awkward and uncomfortable with it. But as soon as you take that step, then you have this tremendously hopeful next step, which is realizing that something can be done about it right now, today. Change classroom culture, reward classrooms with cohesive cultures, incentivize inclusivity. Now, I understand the thinking that, you know, part of society is a natural process and it's a natural order to who are the leaders and who are the cool cats and who aren't. And there's a natural process there. But I think one's got to be careful when you have people losing their lives and say, oh no, that's just part of the natural order of social evolution. When I was at school, teachers commented on how unusually vicious the guys in my class were to each other. Everyone just being vicious and nasty to one another. And our class really stood out. We really stood head and shoulders above other classes of that year and other years before and after. Where does that come from? Well, I know the answer to that, but the more important question is, how do you change this culture? I think one of the ways is you disincentivize tyrants, and they are usually very easy to recognize because they're very loud, and the tormentors, and send them for counseling. Have them go on a journey to figure out what's going on with themselves. Also make it a shared responsibility. If there's silent consent to bullying, and there so often is, give entire classes detention. Because what we're aiming to do here is get rid of the sense of being emotionally compromised. And an entire classroom can have several members in it that feel that way.
I just lost my planet. I can tell you, I am emotionally compromised.
This can also teach classes to recognize the warning signs.
It's very pretty, Bishop, but what are we looking for?
That's it.
We solve this problem by making happier classrooms. Sounds soft, doesn't it? Sounds silly. But a lot of lives are on the line if we continue to live in denial about this. And a lot of lives can be saved if people simply volunteer to create better, more cohesive, kinder societies, starting in the classroom. And I think society as a whole can benefit from learning to be a society in the classroom. Does that make sense? I'm not going to take it further than that. I'm going to be putting up a really interesting video on the JonBenet Ramsey case in the next couple of hours, so look out for that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.